example, parental alienation. Okay, so how would a parent provide evidence then if they can't secretly record someone? How do they provide evidence that there is parental alienation going on? Do they get the child to testify? Like, how would you prove it?
With parental alienation, there are a lot of, again, because it's just become more and more popular of a
Yeah.
claim, and it's actually become a thing on its own.
Yeah.
Always the best way to do it is you don't want it to become a he said, she said between two parents.
Yes. That's right.
And even back in the day when parental alienation wasn't really a concept with that name, it was still, oh, she's trying to turn the kids against me. He's
Yeah.
trying to get the kids to hate me.
Yes.
What was generally found out when you had an independent third party expert, like a psychologist or a psychiatrist
I
or a
see.
social worker, speak to the kids.
Right.
And what you would have is the kids desperately saying things to each parent just because they love that parent and they're trying to keep that parent happy.
Yeah.
So the child might come back and say to dad, yeah, mommy yells at me all the time and I'm really upset and I don't want to go.
Yeah.
And so, well, of course, that's going to go in dad's materials. And then
Yes.
mom filed and said, I can't make Charlie go home after the end, or I can't make Charlie go to his dad's because he cries, he doesn't want to go. He says it just gets him so upset to go to dad's. He obviously doesn't want to go. And what neither party is getting is the child is telling each parent what he thinks they want to hear because he loves both of them and he doesn't want either of them angry with him or her, and they don't want to be the one that has to make the decision of having to pick and choose between parents. And the parents are trying to make them do that. And that's why kids get recorded. Okay, I've got the phone going now. Say to the phone what you just told me about how much you hate your dad and you don't want to go with him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a horrible position to go in. So how do you get evidence if you think that's going on? The best way is to retain a third party expert, like an assessor who could be either in the medical field, like a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or a mental health facilitator, or to have like from the office of the children's lawyer. They will do assessments as well, so that you do have like and maybe a social work expert, but somebody that can actually meet with the children, really find out from the child's perspective what's going on and how it's going to do, and then they will prepare a report, and the report can go before the court.
Okay.
Generally, when you're trying to leave it between he said, she said between the parents, it's really, really hard. And both of you may actually be telling the truth about what your child is saying to you and how you feel about it.
Yeah.
But the kid's desperately trying to get the parties just to let them be happy, let them be able to move back and forth, knowing that it's okay to enjoy being with dad, or it's okay to like being with mom. But sometimes you need a third party to come in and do that assessment. So that's the way to do it, not to try to make a recording that you think is proving what you think it's proving, because it may not. I have actually seen cases where, you've got dad with his recordings with the kids, and you got mom with the recordings with the kids, and the kid is saying something completely different. So what's the judge supposed to do? Find the kid as the perpetrator of the issues in this case and lying? It's parents put kids in horrible positions. They shouldn't do that. That's the biggest problem, and what you're going to see more and more. If you even look up surreptitious recordings in family law cases, even if you Google it and you start looking through the cases and some of the ones we've seen, that is the point that gets made over and over and over again, is chances are what you are recording isn't actually going to prove the point you think it's proving. And it could quite easily backfire on you, because right off the bat, the fact that you're doing a secret recording means that you're not an honest person, you're not ethical, you're trying to do something sneaky. And if you feel you have to do that or you're not going to get the truth, there are other and better ways of doing it. Again, if both parties consent to a recording, then obviously, it can get admitted if the parties agree to it. But then it's up to the judge to decide what exactly that the recording is worth. And if it's like, if somebody has taken like a half-hour long conversation and edited it down to 15 seconds of the other side losing it and swearing, but without having a context to the whole conversation, again, it's the judge is probably going to say not relevant, or it's been, I need to see the whole conversation or none of it. You can't pick and choose what you're going to present. And again, for other evidence on how to prove that, as I said, it's a lot better if you can have, especially from a third party expert. That's always really helpful. Someone that is used to dealing with kids that are going through some trauma and stress because of their parents' inabilities to be civil with each other, or and parties can agree to have an assessment done. Again, usually what you quite often see is it's a real flag that comes up is that if there is a situation where parents are claiming a child is not happy with the other parent, or is being abused, or it's not working out. And if the other party says, fine, let's get an assessment. I'm more than happy to have my child talk to a social worker or doctor or whatever. And yeah, I'm agreeing right now that I'm proud that I'm not going to have any issues with getting that done and then having it brought before the court. If a party objects to it, right away for me as a family law practitioner, that'll start raising issues. Saying, okay, why is it you don't want the children to see somebody else? Now, it might be because you feel that the kid's been put through the ringer enough, has already talked to like 8 different experts, and now you're telling me we've got to drag them out and do that again.
Yeah, it's true.
But overall, so those are all the kinds of decisions and things that have to be weighed about trying to get to what is in the best interest of the children. What is a fact? What is an opinion? What is just an example of parents behaving badly? And it does happen. And what courts have often found on these recordings too is they're saying, yeah, he or she, your ex, really, really behaved badly with you.
Yeah.
But just because they behave really, really badly with you doesn't mean they're not a good parent.
Yeah.
They're just a really upset ex-spouse. So yeah, the two of you have a horrible relationship and you're going to have to figure that out. But it doesn't mean that either of you is a bad parent, because your relationship with kids are totally different and you could be doing great with your kids. It's just the two of you are a disaster trying to communicate with each other.
So yeah, so Helen, is there anything else you wanted to add, or I was just going to do the wrap up now because I think we have a lot of really good information today.
No, even, well, or maybe just to do one more case, Sordi versus Sordi. And this is a Court of Appeal case.
Okay.
And in this one, the Court of Appeal for Ontario upheld the trial judge's refusal to admit legally taped conversations. While the recordings themselves were legal, they were done without the knowledge of the opposing party or the children.
Yeah.
Justice Epstein, for the Court of Appeal, endorsed the trial judge's decision in this regard and noted that the trial judge relied on solid principles that took into account not only the sound public policy of trying to discourage the use of secretly recorded conversations in family proceedings, but also his assessment of the probative value of the tapes in relation to the issues before. So if you really are thinking this is the only way you can prove your case, really think again and really make a decision about whether this is something you should be trying to do or not.
Okay, so Helena, that was great. That was fantastic. Thank you so much for coming in today to share your insight with us and expertise. And yeah, I think just a personal note from me. Maybe I'll edit this out. See how it goes. Yeah. So I think most of my viewers probably know that I was a party to a lawsuit at one point. I was a litigant, and I can remember how obsessed you can get with your lawsuit and how carried away you can get. So sometimes you kind of like you're so obsessed with proving how the other side did something bad that you kind of lose sight with a lot of things. So I hope that today's video with what Helena said and with what the courts have said will hopefully remind parents that they are ultimately parents. And it is so important to think about what you're doing and how it's going to affect your children, because you don't want your lawsuit to cause irreversible damage to your children. I hope that I mean, I'm not a psychologist here, but I'm just kind of speaking from my heart, kind of like personal experience. I think that being in a lawsuit is probably one of the worst experiences one can go through, and I can't. My lawsuit was not even in family law; it was in easy civil law. But I can already understand, how the impact it has on your family, on yourselves, and on your family. So I hope that everyone will consider. Again, I always do this. I always promote settlement, mediation, out of court options, or maybe even med-arb. Just take a look at some of our videos on out of court options, and just try to work things out with the other side. Anyway, so that's enough for me. So Helena, you wanted to say something?
Even just talking about that whole thing about getting so personally invested and wrapped up in a case.
Yeah.
Family law is probably one of the worst that way, because we're going right to the heart of
Yeah.
the social unit in our society, which is the family. Something that's supposed to be private and precious and among
Yes.
yourselves. And if it falls apart, that's horrible enough on its own.
That's
Then
right.
having to go out there and put it on a public stage, and like getting all the facts of your case being published
Yeah.
and for anybody to read and see is
Yes.
really, really horrible. And I think that, again, I'm just putting in a plug for lawyers.
Yeah.
We are not bad people, but a lot of people hate lawyers. But the reason that we've always said it is that what happens is lawyers very rarely get to be in a position where they can step in and do something to prevent something bad from happening. Lawyers are usually brought in to do damage control because the horrible thing has already happened. And all we can do is try to repair that or get people so they can move on after that. But the damage is already done. But a lot of people just say, well, it's all the lawyer's fault. So we're saying, well, no, we're coming into a situation that's already been horrible. Whatever was awful was done, has already been done. All we're trying to do, hopefully, is fix it if we can, and do the best that we can to get our clients so that they can move on in the best position possible. But it wasn't our fault they ended up where they went, and there wasn't any chance, in most cases, that the lawyers were, before people do really dumb things, if they would think, maybe it's worth paying a lawyer to go and talk to them before I decide to take this next step. Maybe it would work, but unfortunately, that's not human nature, and that's not normally what happens. But
all right. Well, thank you so much for sharing again. I thank you everyone for watching. And if you're new to our channel, please consider subscribing and hit the bell so that you'll be notified of our upcoming videos. And then we'll see you at the next video. Bye.
Great. Bye. Thanks, Heather. It was fun as usual. Take care.